Welcome everybody to our first in 5 years in-person town meeting. It's a hybrid meeting, so we have a whole bunch of people online. I see 19, well, subtract our connection, so maybe 15 or 16 connections in addition to everyone here. The first thing to do is determine if we have a quorum. So we need to make sure that residents here are counted. I'm just going to do a count quickly. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 36.
There are 20 online.
And there are 20 of us online. And somebody else just called him. So it looks like we have a quorum, which means the business of the meeting can proceed. That's great. So we're going to start the meeting off with an invocation, which Joe Clark is, Reverend Joe Clark has graciously agreed. He'll come up and do the invocation. Joe's done this quite a few times. You can use this one or that one?
I don't need 5 minutes either. Gracious God of our good times and bad, we give thanks for the springtime flowers, the early morning bird song, and the seasonal rain. Maybe not so much for the high pollen counts and the humps and bumps of the railroad crossings, but we do give thanks for the beautiful azaleas, the fledgling bluebirds, and the barred owls calling us in the evenings. For the rich tapestry of colors and the sounds of summer in the parks, changing of the seasons, help us preserve what gives us meaning, joy, and purpose. We live in abundance. Help us to remember the poor and value the marginalized and those who clean our houses and pick up our trash and mow our lawns. We give thanks for our neighbors who spend their time, energy, and good sense to keep this town working for the preservation of our good fortune to weave a community that cares for the earth and puts the common good ahead of personal gain or comfort. Let us listen to the impatient voices of the younger people who live here and bring a view that is of important value. Thank you for our town council and mayor, for the commissions and volunteers, knowing that what we hold in common is more than what might divide us. Bless this gathering this evening, bless our families, our children and grandchildren, and let us remember those who are no longer with us. Alan Janis, Joan Mahaffey, Doris Gordon, Terry Cox, Jimmy Shiflett, and Birgit Henninger. May their lives be a quiet reminder of the preciousness of each one of us, and let us abide in your mercy. Amen.
Excellent words to contemplate and start this meeting off with. So the meeting, as always, is a combination of required business and the opportunity to have, if you will, reports in various aspects, and I'm sure you've all seen the agenda. So the first business for the meeting is to approve the agenda. I need a motion to... Okay. Does anyone have anything to contribute about the agenda at this point? Hearing none, then the agenda will be as presented in this draft. If I can have the next slide. Okay. I have this here. to start the meeting off just with some operational matters. We've done the quorum. It's been verified by my count. None of the board objected. We see all the members who are here virtually. As everyone should know, Robert's Rules of Order prevails at the town meeting. It now also prevails at the town council meetings. And we will operate relatively an informal version of the Robert's Rules of Orders, but not so informal that we won't require motions and ordered discussions. So also, because last year we had some controversy over how some of the process was handled, determined that we would have a parliamentarian who serves as a consultant to the chair, and in fact to anyone, any other person wishing to speak. That means that he will confer with me about anything that I have a problem with, or in rare cases he will try and remind me or anyone of the correct procedure should we encounter something going a little awry. Dennis, thank you very much for agreeing to do this so we can have not the chair entirely have to wing it here with Robert's Rules of Order. And lastly, the voting procedure. We have virtual attendees. The council directed that they be full participants in the meeting, so they're entitled to vote. So when it comes time for a vote, we're going to include them, and I'll go into any details when we get to a vote. We already had one on the agenda, so any matter that for which there is a clear majority, we won't have to invoke a more systematic approach to the voting. We'll deal with that when we get there. All right, then the next item is the approval of town meeting minutes from last town meeting. They were in the packet of material. Hope some of you had a chance to read it. I need a motion to approve the minutes from last year. Georgette has moved to approve the minutes. Anybody have any problem or comments on the minutes from last year? Okay, then we will move on to a vote to approve the minutes. I'll ask for the nays first. Anyone not approve those minutes? Hearing none. All in favor? All right, the majority, in my opinion, has approved the minutes. All right, we'll now move on to my state of the town report. Maybe a comment about the agendas in order. I'm going to give a state of the town report. We're going to do the volunteer of the year. Then we're going to have two presentations, which I put here in front of consideration of the budget and the tax rate, because they those matters include items in the budget, and I wanted to be sure that the discussion it was clear when you take a look at the budget, consider it, that what was about. So we'll have two presentations. Then we'll deal with the budget and tax rates. That shouldn't be more than an hour and 15 minutes into this meeting. So nobody's going to be staying up terribly late, and hopefully everyone will stay to hear the rest of the reports, which consist of the HPC's report, their award. The Planning Commission will give a brief report, and then also in line with the Planning Commission will be a report on the future, the considerations of the future of the commercial corner, something I hope all of you are begin to pay attention to now. And then Patty's going to do a summary of our stormwater management programs and projects that we have going. All right, so let me get on with my report. Next slide. We'll get on with that. They want to always, at the top of the meeting, recognize how the town works, all of the individuals who make the town work. That begins with our actual formal employees. Kathy, who's full-time. She's the face of the town, as you know. She's the face of the town, handles all the residents and other inquiries and issues, and also does a myriad of other things in addition to helping the mayor. She's the secretary of the Planning Commission. I believe she does the minutes and the bulletin. She puts together the bulletin, which is a seriously complicated job given all the inputs to the bulletin. So Kathy really contributes a lot, and this town wouldn't be anywhere as well-functioning without her. And then Jean Moyer, who is only our second treasurer in about 30 years. I made up 30. It may be longer than that. Jean's here. In my opinion, we've been beyond lucky to have Jean willing to do the treasurer's job. You wouldn't have thought we could get someone who would approach the competency and skill of Mary Charlstrom, but Jean is really having been a mayor with Mary and now with Jean. She is doing a spectacular job keeping me in line, keeping our money in order, keeping everybody else doing what they should. She's just recently taken it upon herself to update our personnel handbook. Read that as create much of the personnel handbook. So Jean is really, excuse the pun, a treasure in this position. Thank you, Jean. All right, let's have the next slide. We go a little bit faster. Our contract employees, who are really part-time, are the town archivist, Pat Petula, and our records management officer, Marilyn Fry. Thank you very much. Next slide, then. The webmaster. She deserves a bigger page than this. Christine has contributed so much to the quality of our website while she was a town councilor and now since, and is continuing to really manage the content on the website in a spectacular fashion. I know all of you already, most of you have had to use the website, and the amount of information it contains has expanded dramatically, and its functions will continue to get better, as you will see, because we are looking at adding additional modernizing functions on the website. For that, we have an item in the budget. And we'll be hiring someone who has expertise in areas Christine doesn't and has more time than Christine is already spending. Okay, next slide. Audit Financial Review Committee of one is John Klinger. So fiduciary responsibility requires that someone look at what the treasurer is up to with our monthly accounts, and that's what John does, just to see that everything appears to be on track and the records are being kept in the way we want them to be kept. So John, thank you so much for doing that regular basis. Next slide. Town Council, of course, I'm not going to say much about them. Some of you are here. Rob Gilmore's here. Chris Grisham is here. Peter's here, of course, and Barbara. Ava Patron, I think, is at home, may not even be logged in yet. I don't know if she's there, but Paul is out of town, so she's got kid responsibilities. And Mary Warfield is not present at the meeting. She has a conflicting engagement for tonight. So I have to say, I've been mayor way too many years, and I've had a lot of town councils, and those town councils have varied in the commitment of the councilors in their preparedness when we come into meetings, the kind of things we need to do to get consensus, to get everybody working together. And the current council this past year has been absolutely top-notch in terms of taking their responsibilities seriously. This town, and when I say this town, I mean you. When we get individuals who volunteer their time for this, it's spectacularly gratifying that things work as well as they do. So, great. Next slide. Planning Commission, all of whom are appointed, and Georgette is the chair, has been the chair for a bunch of years. They've been running pretty well, I believe, and with her other commissioners, Sylvie Favre, Robert Johnson, Jeff McCrean. Peter is the council representative. You'll recall he was Planning Commission chair prior to becoming a council member. And Bob Christen is the alternate. Thank you all for serving on the commission. Next slide. Board of Supervisors of Elections, they literally or figuratively twiddle their thumbs for much of the year, and then everything happens right around the election, an election or a town meeting, should there be a special town meeting. So Nick is still the chair, he's here, and so is Mary and Margot. You saw taking the ballots. Thank you guys for continuing. All right, the Historic Preservation Commission, who plays a significant role here in Washington Grove, and they have had a single chair since inception, which is like 2001 or something like that. He's covering his face, but I think the success of the HPC and their contributions in myriad areas of the town's of interest to the town, from working with residents to renovate their homes and keeping them, encouraging them to retain historic features, to the comprehensive plan, where we want to emphasize our historic character in many, many areas now and in the future. The field, we got the field preserved over there in the meadow, using the HPC and the arguments for historic preservation. So there's a lot of things, and every time we turn around, there's another one. So we are very fortunate to have such a committed. Do I have something wrong up there?
Yeah, the alternate, Kirk Greenway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, I didn't put Kirk on there. We did disapprove him last meeting before. So right, Kirk Greenway is now the alternate. Thank you, Bob. I knew that. But the rest of them are Wendy Harris, Bill Earl, Mimi Stiles, and Dave Stovepack. A number of those are also long time serving on the HPC, and their commitment is as appreciated as much as Bob's. Next slide. Board of Zoning Appeals has been moribund, which is actually a good thing. So Charlie Charlstrom recently took himself off the board. Sad Amagai is the only one with board experience, and he agreed to remain. Jane Suzanne has agreed to join recently, and we're still looking for a third member. The board only functions when there is an appeal on a decision by the Planning Commission which the applicant feels is incorrect or wants relief from. Next slide, then. Shared Use Pathway Committee has been regularly breathing down the necks of the county's Department of Transportation in order to develop the Washington Grove connector pathway into the end of Brown Street. We do not have a report on that tonight, but I'll mention it a few times coming up. But they've been very conscientious about communicating and ensuring that the town's interests in many areas are being taken seriously. In fact, the alignment of the connector, which has been presented, will be presented to the planning board soon. The 35% design, that alignment was actually suggested by the committee. Bob sketched it out, and we all went down and walked it out, and so we've been playing a pretty active role in getting this thing moving. Thanks to that committee for their work. Next slide. All right, now we move on to our volunteer committees and the chairs. Now, I'm sure all of you probably in one way or the other participate in one or more of these committees. It's the backbone of the town. You've all heard me call the committees the town staff. They really do the research. They make proposals for improvements in their areas of interest, and they bring to the mayor and to the council ideas and plans that you would expect from a staff, were we to have a staff. So we want as many people to participate in those committees as we can, which is why they remain volunteer and not appointed. But I've listed here just the chairs. Many of these, the chair is the driving force or just kind of the organizing force, and the members of the committee are active and play a big role. So yeah, I'm not going to read them all. I want to mention now the town council reports for this meeting summarizes the activities of all of the committees in addition to a few other areas. They're very comprehensive concerning what the committees have done in the past year. And I urge everyone to at least skim over and see that, because it's a major eye-opener to see how much has actually been done by all of you and others through the year, and as always. So they deserve certainly get my appreciation, and the town's as well. So here you see 5 of them of the committees. Next slide are others, the newer committees like the Meadows Committee, and old committees such as the Woods and Recreation. I want to mention the Emergency Preparedness and Safety Committee. In particular, we do not have a chair. In fact, we don't even have members. What we do have, playing all those roles, is Chris Grisham. And Chris is, I mean, he really does deserve a real great round of applause, because he's taken that. He's really, keeping on top of a lot of things that the safety, former safety committee and emergency preparedness now had been doing. And I hope somebody here or several somebodies will step up and work with him to get this committee, flesh it out so that it can actually do a lot more when the burden is shared. Dave Cosson served on it for quite a while, so he knows the kind of things that the committee has done. So I hope people will consider getting involved in this. All right, next slide. I had to put this in here. This isn't a committee. This is an individual who, on the council, who agreed to one of his areas of responsibility to be maintenance. Well, ever since we have a contracted landscaping and maintenance, we have needed a coordinator. So Peter served as the coordinator. Practically everybody knows him. He walks around town all the time, trying to keep up with Silas. But Peter has really, he's the one who interacts with our landscape contractor, and he's always taking it very seriously and been very responsible, and there's no question we're very lucky that he has taken on this role and does it so well. Peter. Okay, so next slide. Here, I did want to put up a contractor, if you will, but Peter would be standing up here singing their praises. He certainly has been in council meetings. They have proven to be very adept and energetic about handling things that the town wants done the way the town wants it done. Peter communicates that, others communicate, and so they've been a terrific partner who have been, I think, managing a good deal of the town's landscape maintenance in a great way. Okay, next slide. Finally, we're out of recognition. So now let's go on to what I usually do, and I'm going to do it quickly because everybody should have been following most of these things. I usually do that, some highlights from the past year. So you guys can read. I'm not going to read this to you, but these are things that happened in roughly the last year. The Meadow Restoration Plan was implemented. That required reaching town consensus. That was a process, a classic Washington Grove process. But I think we got there, and phase one I have certainly heard from many of those who were skeptical that they thought the phase one results were very good. So we have more to do, but that was great. The Renewable Energy Conversion Incentive Program was renewed for a second year this last year. There were more awardees of grants, and everybody feels it's successful. I'm not going to say any more. We have a presentation on the Renewable Energy Conversion Program coming up. Next slide. The Washington Grove Connector, I'm not going to say any more about that. The step we're all waiting for is a mandatory review by the planning board of the 35% design, after which they'll go to the 100% design and start construction. Town ownership of our streetlights. Many of you may think this is a small matter, and you would think, except that Pepco has proposed to replace and upgrade, quote, upgrade, all their old streetlights throughout their service area. And they came out with this in their tariff proposal to the Public Services Commission, and they had 4 options for lights, not one of which we want anywhere near the town. So we were already discussing the idea of owning our own streetlights, and that just pushed us way over. So that we've been in discussions jointly with other municipalities to make ownership of streetlights by municipalities a practical thing. They were directed to do that in I think it was 88, a long time ago. And not a single municipality, the only ones who have ever gotten ownership of their own streetlights in the Pepco service area is Washington, D.C. And the reason is obvious once you start and look and see what the hell they wanted you to do that. Anyway, we've made great progress. It looks like we're going to have an agreement this year that will make it possible for the town to decide whether or not we want to buy these old streetlights and maintain them. And that's coming up. Okay, next. Contract bids ordered during the year. We did the refuse and recycling contracts. They will be good for 3 years if we choose to renew them annually. Leaf collection also was renewed, I think. That's for 5 years, the leaf collection, should we choose to renew it year by year. And we did road paving, which in the last couple of times we've done that. We've done it by combining the budget of 2 years. So we do it like in July and do the work. And then we don't have to do it every year because it is somewhat of an effort to manage a road paving bid and contracting. So for example, this year we're not doing anything in July, but we will in fiscal 26 toward the end of the year in combination with fiscal 27. All right, the stormwater infrastructure maintenance project is also a contract. Hopefully everybody has been following that. We did execute a contract worth $577,000 to do work here west of Grove Avenue, and Patty's going to talk a little bit more about that, so I'm not going to go into it anymore. But we're using ARPA funds and state funds. The ARPA funds must be expended by the end of next year, and we should be able to have that done. All right, next slide. Hybrid town meetings. I mentioned, not town meetings, council meetings. We've had several. We'll have one on a week from Monday. Renovation of the commercial corner. With the Planning Commission activity and Peter pushing it, we've had discussions with the property owner concerning her interest in upgrading that property so it's a better property for her. And to do that, we wanted a better property for us. So we believe the time is right that everybody can get what they want. We'll see, but. That happened this year, and moving into next year, you'll see in a moment when I go on to looking ahead. Playground work group. So Eva, who is going off the council as of tonight, was very proactive in looking at the playground and promoting the fact that, hey, we haven't added any equipment there. Some of the equipment's old and tired. Maybe we should be upgrading. We should be renovating. We should be doing something to the playground. So an ad hoc work group has been formed. It's under the umbrella of the rec committee. They are exploring new equipment and the renovation. All right, next slide. All right, so we're now on the next slide then. We'll move on to looking ahead. This is quick. Stormwater projects. There's a few. There's this, and I'll go back up. Thank you. The first one's just there. That's this, the project that we executed on the last day of last year. We're in the design phase that we're hoping to complete at least 2/3 of it by June and get the council's approval to move ahead with construction, completing the rest of it in the next month after that, and then move ahead with construction, whole thing to be finished hopefully in the spring of next year, if not sooner. Next slide. The other stormwater project is the West Woods. That's the elephant in the room, or the elephant in the town, which really needs addressing. The problem is that anybody who looks at it says we'll need a lot of dollars. We also need a way to get those dollars, and to do that we need some preliminary high-level engineering proposal to focus on to look for funding. So we got that with a joint project with the Montgomery County Green Bank. They're calling it the Climate Resilience Project, which they're working with us for that. And a study has been going on to make these recommendations to the town as to what might be done in terms of actual physical mitigation which we can use to go out and get the kind of money. We're talking well over $1 million, possibly $2 million for this. At least that's what we're told by those who know how much these things cost. Okay, and so we hope we're going to get that study, and then we need to set the scope of work for the project and pursue funding. Next slide. And then the rest of the program, there's more than just the Westwood study. There's further flood management strategy, and also the Green Bank would like to offer us residents a way of addressing their stormwater, flooding, climate conversion, energy conversion, whatever needs, and support that in some way, whether it's with low interest loans or advice or whatever. So that's also part of that project. Next slide. Sustainability, renew the renewable energy conversion incentive program. It's coming to the council in June for next year. It's in the budget. The renewal will renew it for 5 years. The intention would be to renew it for 5 years, so it doesn't need annual renewal. It just needs annual funding. That would be a whole lot easier for everybody. Next. The Washington Roof Connector, we want to get the final approval and engineering, and hopefully the Department of Transportation wants to start construction in fiscal 26, completing it maybe by fiscal 27, but I have no idea. Next. The commercial corner I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to go over that again, except that I have information that nobody else has, because I was tasked with talking to the town attorney. And the appropriate strategy to make possible what we have in mind, and Peter's going to go into that, is to alter our zoning requirements in the commercial corner to offer carrots, a carrot to the, or one or more carrots to the property owner if they do a renovation. They spend so much money, and we can you can put things like the facade needs to meet our requirements, whatever. That's where we're going. This is coming up. The Tatiana Bell, as well as the town, the planning commission, want to get on with this, so we're going to try and do this quickly as these things can be done, which sometimes isn't so quickly. Next. The playground. I already mentioned the playground. The idea of creating a master plan for the playground. So if you're going to do a lot of changes, it's going to cost money, and it needs a plan. It should have a plan, and the funding needs to be made available, whether in 1 year or over several years. So the budget we're proposing here tonight includes money for one piece of equipment, $30,000. That's how much these things cost. So, so this ad hoc work group has indicated their intention to bring to the town and the council a master plan for the playground. And I think that's it for this.
Can I mention one thing about that?
No. Yeah? Sure.
Yeah, I was just that $30,000 for a piece of equipment. Dane and Steve works a heroic effort to fix the merry-go-round, which hasn't worked. Well, think about it though. That was like on his own, and I think that's something that he should be recognized for, even though they both don't like getting recognized.
True. So. Okay. Well, maybe we might do that. All right. That's the end of my report. Are there any questions, given the fact we're going to have presentations in most of those areas here shortly? Okay, there'll be time to ask questions anywhere along the way. But let's move on to the last thing I'm going to do before we hear from Bob about the renewable energy conversion, and that's the Volunteer of the Year Award, something I started way back when, and try to recognize one or more of our residents who have made really over and above contributions, either over a period or in recent past, in an area which has made the town better or caught the imagination of the town and residents, and just resulted in things, and we're so lucky to have them. So this year, next slide. Now, okay, well, we couldn't give this to Steve while he was an employee, but he's not an employee, yet he still contributes to the town, you know, almost as much as if he was an employee. I'm calling him handyman extraordinaire. He serves as a project advisor for things around town. When you ask, how do we do this, or what do you think we should do over here, he's got something valuable to say about it. He's a facilities expert, of course, so he knows the ins and outs of the hall, for example, or the drainage areas, you name it. And lastly, he's an all-around good guy. So, you know, he's so great for contributing to the town. He deserves this absolutely. He's not here. I think he's having a glass of wine. The rest of us aren't. But as you know, the Volunteer of the Year, and we're behind in passing these out. We're going to fix that in the next couple of weeks. But what we've been awarding is this, can you get the next slide? Is a framed page from the Maryland's 157 municipalities. And so it's something like this, which we'll give to Steve and backlog to give to others. I'm going to put a little plaque on it to indicate who got it and whatever. And if they're really unlucky, I'll sign it.
If you're a mayor.
Yeah.
That vote.
Right. Okay, so that brings us to the end of my long monologue here. So let's move right along to the Renewable Energy Conversion Program, which Bob is going to summarize for us or discuss.
Yeah, John said a lot about it, but just to remind you, the incentive program is put in place to reduce the carbon footprint of the town. And we're updating the inventory for this year, but for the last we did it was 2023, and it was 6,000 tons of carbon our community puts out. 6,000 tons per year. So the biggest components of those, no surprise, are our electricity, our heating our homes, cars, and food. So the incentive program is meant to address the first three of those: electricity, heat, and the cars. And so if you put in a high-efficiency heat pump and get renewable electricity, you're eligible. If you get an EV, replace your gas-guzzling car with an EV, and get renewable power, you're eligible as well. So we awarded 5 EV incentives so far, and 4 heat pump incentives so far. There's 4 that are still in various states of process, 5 rather, in various states of process. And there were 5 heat pump conversions that were done without the incentive, interestingly enough. So we have funds to do about 13 per year. And the state's target of reaching 60% reduction by 2030 requires the town, if we follow that, the 60%, requires the town to do 20 heat pump conversions per year and 60 cars per year. So that's obviously very ambitious, but that's part of the state's ambition. So so this year we also, the federal tax credit may go away. We don't know. It's all sort of up in the air right now. But if you're going to do it, this year may be a good year to do it. So if your heat pump and your air conditioner is looking like it's on its last legs, your furnace, if your car's on its last legs, you might want to push up that ambition a little bit. There's plenty of information on the website, and you can always call me. We're also arranging for an advisor to the town, utility advisor, to actually go around and knock on doors and ask the residents who have not signed up for renewable power whether they're interested in signing up. And it's usually for community solar. Community solar seems to be the best way to actually get renewable power at this point. So he's gonna start knocking on doors late May, June sometime. So we're also, just a couple other projects, we're working on a leaf composting project, and we're working on a food waste composting project. And we're gonna be sending out a survey to people to sort of gauge the interest and garner interest in those two projects. So look for that. Thanks.
The council will be discussing the renewal of the program, as I mentioned earlier, in June. I think could be May 19th, a week from tomorrow, Monday, but certainly by, if not then, in June. Any residents interested or having questions can tune in and attend and have something to say about that. All right, so let's move along then to the item 9 on the agenda, which addresses diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the Grove. We all recall the formation of the Racial and Racial and Social Equity Committee, RASEC, back during the pandemic, and the significant amount of work and interest that they did and garnered in improving and looking at the town's handling of diversity in our relationship with our neighbor in Emery Grove, and overall the town's past history of racism and racial discrimination. They've self-dissolved and no one stepped up to form it again. But the last thing that the town did was to, and the council did, was to agree that some education in diversity, we'll call it DEIB now, DEI, would stand the town well. Individuals and the town going forward. And Barbara Raimondo and Mary Warfield, due to their efforts, they arranged and located and arranged for Leadership Montgomery to offer some education seminar, active sessions, both to town residents in general first, and then to town leaders, committee leaders. And those of us who have participated were extremely impressed and stimulated, and are interested in carrying forward on the ideas and the issues that that have been raised, both starting with RASIC and now continuing. So I wanted to show you. We asked the facilitators, Leadership Montgomery, to prepare to do a little presentation. So rather than have them ruin one of their Saturday nights, they recorded the presentation. We're going to show that now, so that hopefully all of you at this meeting will get an idea as to what happened, what they taught, and what we think we learned and what we believe will be very helpful going forward. So let's hear it.
Hello, and thank you so much for including us in your meeting. While we're sorry we can't join you in person this evening, we're grateful for the chance to share this brief recorded presentation. We hope it reflects not only the work we did together, but also the energy, reflection, and commitment your town leaders brought to each conversation. Tonight's presentation is both a recap and an invitation. We'll share highlights from the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging training and workshop series we facilitated over the winter and spring. And we'll reflect on what we heard from participants about the progress made and the opportunities ahead. Most importantly, we hope this gives more members of the Washington Grove community a sense of what this work looks like and why it matters, and encourages you to take part in the next phase. My name is Sarah Burnett, and I serve as the Senior Director of Programs and Training at Leadership Montgomery. We're a nonprofit that works to develop and support leaders who are informed, equipped, and connected to strengthen Montgomery County. Our mission is to connect and prepare leaders to build thriving and inclusive workplaces and communities. We do this through a variety of programs, training, and partnerships, like the one we've had the pleasure of building here in Washington Grove. The diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work you've embarked on aligns closely with our community leadership framework, and it's been a privilege to support your efforts. I'm excited to share more about what we've accomplished together.
Great. So hello, my name is Yesenia Regalado, and I'm the Director of Training and Community Impact. And I want to take us back to the beginning of how this journey began with Washington Grove and Leadership Montgomery. So first, I'll start off with Washington Grove. You all passed resolution number 2301, and this was an acknowledging of the exclusionary past of Washington Grove. And just as a reminder, these goals were set forth in that resolution to commit to further engaging in individual and collective work towards bias, further addressing policies and practices that have been racially biased or harmful towards any group, treating all people fairly and equitably, regardless of their identities, supporting ties with neighboring communities, and continuing to build a town where all are welcome to prosper. And so with this, Barbara, Mary, and John reached out to us to help you advance on this, help you really make this not just a value and a statement, but a way of being in action. So we started off first with an introductory training to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this was open to any town resident. We did this back in November, and we started here because we wanted to make sure that people had a common understanding and shared language of certain concepts as we move forward towards action related to the resolution.
So as Yesenia mentioned, we really wanted to focus on building the foundations and building that shared understanding and connection. We started with something simple but powerful: reflection. Through an activity called the Web of Identities, participants explored aspects of their own social and personal identities, things like race, gender, class, ability, and more. This wasn't just about labels. It was about understanding the experiences that shape how each of us sees the world. In small groups, they shared their reflections, which created space for empathy, trust, and relationship building right from the start. From there, we built a common language around key DEIB concepts. We unpacked the differences between diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and also explored some deeper layers, like how dominant cultural norms show up in our everyday lives, the difference between race and ethnicity, and how bias operates in our brains, often without us even realizing it. We looked at real-life scenarios where assumptions and microaggressions can show up, and participants worked together to identify how bias may be playing a role, and more importantly, how to interrupt it. We closed with some practical strategies for de-biasing and invited everyone to begin thinking about how they could apply these approaches in their own day-to-day roles. The goal wasn't just to build knowledge, it was to build readiness, and the energy in the room made it clear that people are eager to keep learning and taking action. If you're watching this and wondering if this kind of session is for you, the answer is yes. There's value here for everyone, and we'd love to have more community members join us in future offerings.
And future offerings are really made possible by a small group of town residents that engaged in a deeper exploration into how to operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within the town. And so after the introductory workshop in November, we embarked on a process with 15 residents, including the town mayor, town councilors, members of town commissions and committees, who engaged in this 3-part series. And the overarching goal of this series was to plan equitable and inclusive practices and policies so that all members in the community and outside the community can interact with one another in ways that people feel treated fairly, welcomed, safe, and respected.
In each session, participants engaged in a mix of formats: individual reflection, interactive group activities, small group dialogue, and whole group discussions. The goal wasn't to just share information, it was to build skills that could be applied in real time. We also wove in homework assignments to support continued application and reflection between sessions. This helped to ground the work in people's lived experiences and encouraged participants to think actively about how these concepts show up in their roles in the community. Across all 3 workshops, the emphasis was on practice, not just thinking about DEIB, but doing the work together. In our first workshop, we laid the foundation for strategic DEIB action. We explored core competencies like cultural competence, inclusive engagement, and conflict resolution, all key pieces for anyone working to build a more inclusive and equitable community. Then we introduced 2 tools: root cause analysis and gap analysis. These helped participants look critically at the current state of DEIB in Washington Grove, envision what they'd like to see in the future, and begin identifying what's getting in the way. Throughout the session, small groups focused on foundational knowledge as their jumping off point, not only to build understanding, but to begin practicing the skills of inquiry, analysis, and collaborative reflection. It was the beginning of a shift from ideas to strategy.
So I want to take a moment to highlight an example that really gained traction as the sessions progressed. As Sarah mentioned, the focus of this was to practice. So there wasn't a single issue that we were looking at, but there was one that kind of kept revealing itself in different ways. And so I want to directly show you what one group came up with. And it's very relevant to the reason why we're also doing this presentation. So in the root cause analysis, they explored the idea of why there aren't enough town residents involved in these DEIB conversations. And as they drilled down to the why, they realized that there may not even be a clearly written or consensus on community goals related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. While the resolution was in place, that's different than having goals to carry that out in a way that has different experiences and viewpoints shaping what those next steps can be. And so we found this really relevant in terms of, and we'll show you later, some of the future action planning.
Session 2 was all about taking what we learned in Session 1 and beginning to map out a plan. We introduced the GHOST framework: goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics, and guided participants through using it to design actionable steps for DEIB efforts. We focused on a specific line from the town's own DEIB resolution: commit to further engage in individual and collective work to understand bias. And we asked, what would it look like to move from that commitment to concrete action? Through discussion and hands-on practice, participants began outlining what the town might want to work on and how to structure it to make it real. This session helped move the group from insight to intention, and then towards implementation.
So again, I want to share notes that came directly out of the session. And as Sarah mentioned, we started with the goal of strengthening individual and collective awareness of bias, but really breaking that down into what it meant. This is just an example of the synthesis that Leadership Montgomery did and some recommendations that we overlaid with what came out of the different groups. So when we break this down into objectives, participants in our group said they wanted to increase personal awareness of implicit and explicit bias and engage more residents in these conversations. Again, we went into the root causes of what those barriers might be, but then we went into some strategies of how that goal can be achieved. Some of it was community education. Some of it was getting input through community forums, surveys, and focus groups. Again, being very clear on the community goals and the why behind this exploration. We wanted to make sure that there's an inclusive, bi-directional community communication plan, and the continued education specifically on Washington Grove's racially exclusionary past and the town's commitment to undoing those lasting effects. We then broke this down into tactics. And this is where we took those strategies and really outlined what those steps could be in a way that were measurable and in a way that we could later set a timeline for. I'm not going to review every single strategy here, but we'll talk a little bit about where we landed. I did want to show this to you all because there were a lot of great ideas that were generated that you can certainly go back to.
In our final workshop, we focused on moving from planning to doing. With roadmaps in hand, participants worked to identify timelines, accountability strategies, and implementation roles. They reflected on key takeaways from the previous sessions and mapped out what comes next. This session also opened up space for courageous dialogue. Participants named the very real challenges of working across differences in opinion, experience, and perspective. And we modeled how to hold that complexity, how to facilitate conversations that go deep but don't get stuck. This work isn't easy, but it is possible, and this session helped participants practice the kinds of conversations that can move a community forward.
And so here is where the group landed with its first rounds of implementation. And again, I want to emphasize that this is an iterative process. So although this was laid out, there might be changes and areas for improvement as you get ready to implement this. But one of the goals was examining the comprehensive plan to be aligned with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The objective to that goal is to get 25% of residents to come to consensus on those goals. And again, in order to do that, we believe that town residents should go through the same intro to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging workshop to have that foundational knowledge so that you can come to the table at this point and contribute in positive ways. And we believe that by doing so, the strategy here of increasing civic engagement in Washington Grove will be even more influential and even more impactful. And some tactics to get there, and again, this is what the group came up with in their immediate action steps, are ways to look at increasing volunteerism within the town, a book club, community events, and future trainings. And again, through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we hope that we're able to support you to implement these goals further and to make sure that you're living out your values and putting that into action. I want to go into a consideration that we gave the group during our last session. And this was to acknowledge the backdrop that we're in right now as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We know that there are attacks on this work. We know that people come with varying perspectives and lived experiences, but this work is still important. And really believing in the power of small actions that can change a greater society. And so I'm going to read you a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown that really emphasizes how we want you all to look at this process as a journey. How we live and grow and stay purposeful in the face of constant change actually does determine both the quality of our lives and the impact that we have when we move into action together. Let's spend less time on the imperfection of the process and more time articulating and crystallizing our lessons. So I want to transition us into the evaluation themes because, again, we kept reiterating throughout the workshops that it wasn't about landing on the perfect plan. It wasn't about having all the answers all at once. We'll go over some of the things that came out that can inform how this work moves forward.
As we look back across the participant evaluations, a few core themes really stood out. First, there was a strong appreciation for the structured tools and frameworks we introduced, things like root cause analysis, gap analysis, and the GHOST framework. These weren't just abstract concepts. They were seen as practical ways to break down complex issues and move from conversation to action. What really came through was that how we do the work matters just as much as what we're trying to achieve. Another big theme was about building a stronger, more inclusive community. Participants shared a renewed commitment to increasing engagement on town committees and creating more pathways for diverse participation. There's a sense of readiness, but also a recognition that growing this work beyond a small group will require intention and clear communication. And finally, there was a deep understanding that this work takes time. It's not something that can or should be rushed. Many spoke about the need for patience, persistence, and a mindset that embraces learning. There's also a call to speak up, to keep DEIB visible, and to approach this work with both urgency and care. Of course, with any meaningful process, there are questions that remain, and participants were honest about the ones still on their minds. A big one is how we sustain the work. There's real interest in continuing what's been started, but also some uncertainty around who will carry the torch and how momentum can be maintained, especially without outside facilitation. There were also conversations about implementation. It's one thing to talk strategy and another to bring it into practice. Participants wondered how to ensure follow-through, expand outreach, and stay connected to the goals we've set. And finally, people named the challenges of navigating disagreement, especially when opinions differ about whether enough is being done. There's a desire for accountability, but also for trust and for dialogue that moves us forward rather than deepening divides. These are tough topics, but naming them is part of the process and a sign that this group is ready to keep doing the work together. As we wrap up this recap, we want to take a moment to share some reflections, not from us, but from the participants themselves. Throughout the series, we heard heartfelt appreciation for the space that was created, one where people felt heard, challenged, and supported. Participants shared that they valued the way diverse communication styles were welcomed and how moments of discomfort were met with care and transparency. They noted the importance of having facilitators who could hold that complexity while still making room for reflection, accountability, and learning. Several people also spoke to the effectiveness of the structure, how the sessions were thoughtfully designed to build trust and encourage honest dialogue. While some wished we had a bit more time together, there was a shared sense of hope and momentum coming out of each session. We share this not to center ourselves, but to acknowledge the courage and openness of the 15 town leaders who engaged in this work, and to invite others to join in. These conversations are just the beginning, and the more voices we include, the stronger the Washington Grove community becomes.
So with that, we want to again express so much gratitude. Our emails are there if you have any questions, but I believe at this portion of your meeting, you can direct your questions to participants that were a part of this experience. And also, we look forward to being with you all in the fall when we launch another Introduction to DEIB workshop. And again, we'll make that open to the whole town. We hope to see you there.
So, yeah, I probably should let Barbara comment on this, but we'll be saying more about this at the council. Those of us who attended all of the sessions felt even our early attempts, if you will, to apply the tools that they presented to some, to issues that we think, that some of us think the town, that interested the town right off when RASIC was originally started. And I'm not going to go into any more of this except to say there was a dichotomy between how individuals handle their implicit bias and approach to racism and individuals versus how the community addresses those sorts of things. And some of us, or most of us, believe that there was a significant opportunity to both identify where Washington Grove needs could improve, and I'm not talking any specifics, and how to get there. So, hence the feeling that we got started, we were optimistic, and we'd like to see if the town will get on board with addressing and approaching some of these issues in a way that can be sustained for more than just a short time, and through effective actions. So that's all I want to say on that. Let's go on then to the next item, which is the town budget. And of course, I have a few slides. I hope everybody has looked at the budget. I'm just going to review some top-level things that I think should be pointed out, and then we'll go on to some specific discussions. So let me just do this, and we'll open it up to discussion of the budget. So first off, there's the tax rate and the dwelling tax, and here just summarizes that the council is proposing a constant yield tax rate, which in fact is slightly lower than last year's rate, to yield the same, essentially the same revenue, which is a projection from property tax. It's an estimate, as we got for fiscal 25. The dwelling tax assessment, which is strictly based on the cost of refuse and recycling, will be higher than last year because last year, well, for two reasons. Last year, we included a rebate because the previous year because we had over collected for the cost, and so we rebated to everyone every property who had paid. But this year we saw a slight increase in our refuse and recycling, so it's slightly higher, as I have it, $11 more than what it would have been this current year were it not for the rebate. So it's a nominal increase, about 10%. Next slide. So from income tax, which is estimated by the state for us, they estimated 7% increase to $146,700. The state highway user funds are the same as we got this year. This is estimated. I think it's probably been signed into law already, so that's a firm number. And the county tax duplication funds are in the current county's budget, which is not yet approved. There. Next slide. Now some expenses, and this is the highlights of the expense issues, in my opinion. Salaries were raised by the cost of living adjustment of 2.7% for our region. The landscaping and facility services, we rebid the contract. We have yet to award it, but it looks likely it will be at the same rate as the current year, which is $66,000 for the groundskeeping and the contract, and we allot an additional $30,000 for other projects as they come up during the year. The same refuse and recycling costs of $59,000, no change. Slightly higher leaf collection costs based on the new contract, but this number stays constant for 5 years. And the Renewable Energy Incentive Program Bob described, again, budgeted at $20,000, which is the same as this year. Next slide. Here's a few others of note, and these are the ones that are of importance to the new year. McCatherine Hall maintenance is $50,000, $40,000 more than this year. That is because the hall needs exterior painting and the windows need painting. And this is roughly the amount that was estimated that we required to do this maintenance upkeep on the hall. Road work, I already mentioned, at about $50,000 has been budgeted for this year, which will be expended next June into July. Tree removal, slightly higher from $30,000 to $35,000. Unfortunately, the trees continue to suffer, and we remove the ones that fall and we take down those that are dead, both because sometimes they present a danger, but often because we want to plant new trees and we need to take the old one away to make room for a live tree. Playground equipment, we already discussed that a bit. There's $30,000 for a new piece. Playground refurbishing went up about $14,500, which was one estimate for resurfacing the basketball court. So that's why that particular item is up, and we call it playground refurbishing. Website modernization, I mentioned at the top of my report, at $20,000, which is a steep increase, but will allow us to contract for all kinds of new functions on the web. The fellow who's we're probably going to contract with has been doing some work this year with this year's funds, and he seems to be extremely good and easy to work with. Christine, I think, she found him, and that's where anyway, the money will be spent on the website. And the DEIB education, which you saw a report as to what the outcome of this year's education programs, and the council will look at expanding those education offerings to more individuals in town, getting you all interested, and also defining some actual strategies to apply that will stand the town well moving forward. Next slide. Okay, that's all I'm going to mention about the budget. So at this point, we will open the floor to any budget discussion. So I will first need a motion to approve the budget as presented to this meeting. Peter Negrod has moved, and John Klinger seconded, approving the budget as presented. So discussion, any discussion of the budget? No? Anybody online? No? The budget implicitly includes those tax rates that they're very clearly identified at the top of the income of the section of the budget. So in approving the budget, we'll be approving the tax rates as well. Just recall, that's a rate that is a constant yield. Will raise is estimated to raise the same money from property tax as the current year, based on the state's estimated valuation of property in Washington Grove, which is a slight increase. I mean, the rate is a decrease, but it's to get the same amount of revenue. It means some of our properties went up in value. And the dwelling tax at $212 per dwelling. Well, not hearing any discussion, we can move on to a vote. So now's the time we're going to do a vote. So the first round of voting we'll simply do it by a show of hands, and I will determine whether or not there was a clear consensus based on that vote. In case there isn't, we'll have a second round of voting to get an accurate count. But let's do the first round now. Please, here in the hall, raise your hand. Those of you wanting to vote, you're going to have to hold them up a bit. Hold on. You're going to have to raise your electronic hand. Would be the best, because then everybody can look in the participant list and count the votes. So, okay, all in favor in the hall. I see virtually everybody with raised hands. How are we doing on here? I'm looking, and most of you have raised hands. Based on that, I'm going to call the vote a majority, a significant majority in favor of approving the budget. Budget's approved, tax rate is approved. Thank you. I hope everybody appreciated, we went to great effort to make sure the town knew throughout the budget preparation process that their input was welcome and requested, so that by the time we get to the town meeting, we will have identified any issues and hopefully resolve them. So, because the town meeting is very difficult to fine-tune a budget in this sort of a meeting. All right, then let's move on to the HPC Commission's report and award. So Bob's going to come up here and change hats.
Change hats, yes. Okay. Well, it's been kind of a quiet year for the HPC, along with what it's been doing with the other commissions, the Planning Commission and the other committees. There are two efforts that we are focusing on this year. The first is to update the design guidelines. As you know, we updated the Historic Register nomination, which includes now houses between the 1937 and 1968. So all houses up till 1968 are now considered contributing structures to the town and part of the district. So we're updating the guidelines to reflect that information. The second comes from the 150th. You may recall we had the posters which showed the various buildings that are now missing, and such as the Tabernacle and the auditorium, the hotel, the train station, the two athletic clubs. And so we're looking at having commemorative signage that indicate all of those throughout the town. So that will be a sort of a permanent education for the town. It's been less of a quiet year for construction. There have been quite a few projects that we had to review for the award. And the commission selected a project that represents sort of a hopeful turn for one of the problems we have here in the town, which is vacant houses. And the one that has been selected has been vacant as long as I have lived in town, which is 30 years. It was built in 1911, and not as a cottage, but what we call a four-square. There have been some details that have been simplified with it, and we felt that the substantial work that was done on the house to bring it into the 21st century and preserve the overall character made it the winner. So, do the before. Can you go back to the before? So this was as it stood for 30 years, as long as I can remember. I don't know, it's what people used to call it the Kenvin House. And I don't know if anybody knew the people that lived there. Yes, all right, fantastic. But it was on the list of abandoned structures for a very long time. And it was purchased just last year and by a contractor who renovated it. They did change some of the details. You notice that the porch was not quite so delicate in the new one, and the front door is now the back door, which is a little bit different. The town has an unusual aspect of facing the walkways, not facing the roadways. And then in the back, they removed the shed addition on the back, made a porch and a front door, oddly enough. So this is what is getting the award this year, and so let me just read the inscription on the certificate. They'll also get a bronze plaque for the rehabilitation of a long vacant contributing structure built in 1911. While there were some changes from the original character, the overall high-quality resurrection of the house ensures it will long remain a contributing resource to the historic district. And this is to Jorge Matamoros. I dropped by the house and talked to their son today to see if they wanted to come to the meeting, and he said he would tell them. So we'll deliver the award.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All righty, so now we'll move on to the Planning Commission report from Georgette, and
my first slide is actually another recognition of the members of the Planning Commission, all of whom I greatly appreciate. And Peter Nagrod, in spite of having stepped down as chair when he became a town council member, is actually very important to everything that the Planning Commission is doing. I'm really grateful to have him as our backup. Second slide, please. Okay. These are all listed in the town council reports, so I'm not going to go over them in detail. It's the usual mixture of regular building permits and fences and public ways permits. And I was going to point out under the building permits that we had one sign off for heat pump location. I would just like to point out to everybody in town that in spite of the fact that the town does not require you to get a sign off for heat pumps or propane tanks or AC units, Montgomery County does, and they seem to be very unwilling to accept that that Washington Grove doesn't. So they keep sending the permits back to us. So we try and tell people, if you want anything like this done, send it to us before you send it to Montgomery County. It will make your life somewhat easier. Okay. We had an interesting permit for, if you go to the next slide, the one for plastic paving grids and grass at 103 Brown Street. There's been problems for years because in many areas of town, the verge next to the pavement, it gets driven on, it gets parked on, and when it's rainy or wet, it gets very muddy and mucky. And the new resident at 103 Brown Street, Bill Earl, who's also on the Historic Preservation Commission, actually suggested that he had seen in other places he'd live a system where they put down a base of fine 1-inch gravel and topsoil and plastic paving grids and then sod. And the net result is something that is more resilient to parking and driving on, but looks a lot nicer than what we usually wind up next to the streets. So I really appreciate Bill and his having done that, and it'll be interesting to see how well it works and if it's something that we want to do other places in town. Okay, next slide, please. And the one other thing that I was going to point out was that the Planning Commission came to the conclusion that another thing that we didn't really need to have was for town residents to have to go and get a Montgomery County permit for a fence after getting one from the town. Basically, our fence restrictions are at least as protective as Montgomery County's. And so really having to get a Montgomery County permit after hours just added another layer of time and money to what's already a fairly expensive project. So the Planning Commission put together a couple of new ordinances. One of them adds fences to the structures in Article 4, Section 5B, for which a town but not a county permit is required. And then, because Rob Gilmore very intelligently pointed out at the council meeting, can we really do that? And the answer is yes, we can. But in order to make it completely legal, we need to add an exception to Article 13 because the town adopted the Montgomery County Building Code, and we have to tell them, oh, by the way, we have an exception for any structure listed in Article 4, Section 5B. And then Robert Johnson, one of the other Planning Commission members, actually found the person down at the Department of Permitting Services that we have to talk to and let them know once we've passed all of this. So that's in progress, and I think it's going very smoothly. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Georgette. Next up is the future of the commercial corner. Peter's going to entertain us with a rousing presentation on this.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. John asked me to do a little update on the commercial corner, and I said, oh, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't feel like doing a PowerPoint. I looked at the PowerPoint they did, I think it was 2 years ago, and I was happy to see and unhappy to see that nothing has changed. So let's get to the next slide. So what I'd like to do, and John's already stolen my thunder about what's happening here tonight twice, so we're even a little bit with what I said about Steve. Okay, but what I think is really helpful, now that I'm talking to the town, it's in my mind, I talked to a few people that are very excited about what's happening at the commercial corner. But there's always a few people out there who are not too thrilled with change. And so what I'd like to do just quickly is talk a little bit about, I have up here David versus Goliath. And I know we have some newer members who haven't been here forever who may not know the history of the Southland Company, which owns 7-Eleven. And 40 years ago, I think it was around 40 years ago, we had the 7-Eleven. There was a lot of problems with littering, loitering. You can't say, well, now that we have a new president, I can say undesirables. But it was not a good situation. So the town took on the Southland Company, Corporation, and they won. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, this was one of the highlights of their life, was getting a victory like this. And the reason why I bring this up is that it's been 40 years and nothing has really changed at the commercial corner in 40 years, but times have changed. And when I look at the commercial corner, Bob said, you know, that could be the archway? The Keystone. When you drive down East Diamond and you look at that, we live here forever, so we don't see what it really looks like. But for our visitors and guests, when they come down and they look, this is what they see. This is what Washington Grove is. And it's not a very attractive building. And there's a lot of other things which we'll talk about real quickly because I'm not going to be here that long. But basically, we won that battle, but in a sense, we lost something because we made it so restrictive. We were so afraid of having different types of retail businesses coming in or doing things with that area that I say detente. I was like, you know, it's really true. For like 40 years, we did not talk to the owners of you know, when they wanted to get permission to put a new retail person in, they were allowed to do that. But we did not talk. When I wanted to talk with them about moving the dumpster, it took forever to find out who I would even be talking with. And so, I felt like there was an adversarial relationship between us and the Bell properties. And in reality, they wanted to be part of our community. They wanted to be, to really, to make it into a win-win situation. And so it's been about 2 years that we've been talking with them and moving in that direction. So let's get the next slide. Okay, so I say there's comprehensive plans, goals to the rescue. And it's really true. We worked, Georgette, I can give her a compliment. We worked, and Charlie, and the whole planning commission, and over 80 Grovers worked on this comprehensive plan. And when we were looking at what could we do to change the commercial corner, in the past, we would just be making things up and people would be going, oh, where do you get the power from? Where is this, where is that? You go into the comprehensive plan, and the empowerment is there. And I'm really saying this to the town, not just because of the commercial corner, but anytime you want to do something that's different or create change, go to the comprehensive plan. It's a living document, and it really gives you the power to make things better than they are. So let's go back real quick. Okay, so this is what's going on. I already mentioned the appearance of the building itself. Bob, of course, historic preservation. There was once the Oddfellows Hall there. The other thing is with the dumpster being removed. So anyway, the big deal. The two things of this, okay? Flexibility with retail of what goes in there. That's one. The second thing is residential housing. That's two. Those are two big changes. And let's go down. So let's go through here, okay? So this is the commercial. This is not us wishing for things. This is in our comprehensive plan, and it's written right in there. All right. We want flexibility. Oh, you're too fast. All right, we want flexibility, and the whole goal here is, as John mentioned before, instead of us just changing the ordinance and trying to go that direction, we want to be proactive, and we're going to go and work with the owners of this and make it into a win-win situation where not only are we going to give, we're going to get. And what we want to get is, we want to give by allowing them to have a revenue stream so it's profitable for them to do this renovation, to possibly put in residential housing above. Exciting to me is to have something in there that we, haircutting? Nah, it's not happening for me. We really, to get something that would be a Grove place, a coffee shop or something where Grovers can go and meet, make it more relevant. So the residential housing is where some of that revenue stream would come from. And that's all going to be happening soon. Put a little fire under this guy, and we're moving really nicely now with that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was, in the rear of the building, which is the rear, it's very unattractive, obviously, and it's the butt facing our town, so it really makes it feel like that's not part of our town. And by putting retail shops along there, fixing it up, making it, basically having two fronts, I think that would really make it more of a Grove place. And yes?
Will Grove residents still be able to park on Hickory side of the building to get their mail?
All things will be made clear when I'm finished.
Will that?
Yes.
It has to happen.
Yes, okay.
It has to be there.
Okay, let's do the next slide. Okay, and then the other thing that John, I surprisingly didn't mention today, was that besides the shared use pass coming in from Brown Street, it's also coming from Gaithersburg and goes through the commercial corner, and we need to get an easement from them. So this relationship also would be a bargaining chip for us as far as working with them to do that. And that is really, we met with Gaithersburg several times, and everything takes forever, but it's moving along very nicely. And I think that's going to really help the dynamics of the Grove and the commercial corner as far as how to get from the Grove towards the Gaithersburg area. Okay. And then You have it in here. Okay. Accomplishments, you've seen all this stuff. We're good with that. And then I'm just going to revisit real quick. Next slide. Okay, so if you can see that. Now, you've seen this before, most of you. But just, once again, it would be retail at the bottom. Gene, see the parallel parking?
Yeah, but that's for the residents, and it's Hickory Road, not street.
Yeah. Well, anyway, nothing's happening yet. So that all these questions, everybody's going to be having lots of opportunity to comment on their concerns and what takes place. This is just an initial draft. The importance of this draft, though, is that we did not make this draft. We met with them and we told them what our comprehensive plan was looking for. And the architect came back and basically everything we said we were interested in doing, they basically put the renovations on there, the front-facing Hickory Street is on there. What?
Hickory Road.
Oh, Hickory Street. Oh, Hickory. All right, Hickory Road. We're changing the name. Okay. And okay, so let's do the next slide. And then this would be, right here they have 9 small apartments on top. And I'm sure the people that just took over Allstate Insurance wouldn't be too thrilled with this diagram. But, and so, I mean, that's basically what we have so far. And this is just first step, so nothing's done yet, and there'll be lots of opportunities for the town to get involved and share their opinions on this. But I'm excited. I think that this is going to really change a feel. And being on the Gateway Committee, we talk about this all the time too, because we're really concerned with how the town is viewed from people who are going through the town. And I think that this is an exciting step. And the last thing I'll say is that I wish you could sense the enthusiasm of the Bell people. They're really, really excited about being more a part of the Grove, and I think they're really willing to make this a win-win situation, okay? And the last thing I want to say is that if you voted today, Monica designed that wonderful May 24th Circle Fest, okay? We have 3 bands, lots of beer, lots of food. I hope everybody's going to come with their families and join us there. Last slide says, any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And just to repeat, the town attorney has verbally discussed how she believes we need to move forward, and she'll be putting that into writing. And I'll be discussing that with Georgette at least and the council at the next meeting. Alrighty, our last report tonight is going to be from Patty Klein on stormwater management projects ongoing.
I'll try to condense this so we can continue to move forward with our meeting. So just to kind of give you a couple updates, John has kind of stolen the thunder, but that's fine, initially in his report. I just wanted to, next slide, please. So I actually just wanted to kind of give everybody a quick reference point. Is town of Washington Grove sits on top of 3 watersheds, headwaters to both Seneca Creek, Rock Creek, and Muddy Branch, and that becomes obviously very relevant to some of our burgeoning water issues. But the nice news is that we are at the top in the headwaters of these 3 drainage areas or watersheds. They eventually, of course, all drain into Chesapeake Bay, and that is certainly part of issues that we are part of the larger scheme of making sure that there's a good water quality that goes downstream as well. Next slide, please. So again, just a little bit of history here, short-term history, is actually in 2023, we started working with a company called Soltez, an environmental engineering company, and because we were realizing that these were more wicked problems that were just increasing over time, given these water flows through town, and a lot of it was really focused from the Woods Committee about what was happening in the West Woods, which was receiving a lot of the downstream water coming through the town, as well as issues within the town town itself. So Soltez conducted a stormwater management assessment, a high-level assessment that really was focused on this west side of town for the purposes of looking at what was happening downstream in the West Woods, but they evaluated, if you can see the little drawing there, is they looked at 7 different areas within the town to just understand what is our actually limited but existing stormwater infrastructure, which is very limited, and also the impacts of all of that conveyance through town and ultimately into the West Woods. So they looked at how we would think about reducing both volume and velocity of stormwater conveyance to mitigate flooding on private property, town property and roadways, but also the consequences of what happens downstream with tree damage and soil erosion that we were really starting to acknowledge that was happening in the West Woods. So again, they looked at these sort of 7 different areas and then gave us this sort of high-level report. And they wanted to look at a 100-year storm event, which basically evaluates flooding issues and erosion and looks for the future, but also the more local 10-year storm situation, which is looking at storm drain issues and conveyance and sort of infrastructure issues. So their recommendations at the time, your existing facilities need to be inspected and maintained. We have a lot of what we call asphalt swales. You'll see them like in the church parking lot and other places around town that probably need to be upgraded to something like a regular swale or a bioswale to be more efficient, because those asphalt swales are really just taking water away, but the other things like bioswales actually help to slow down the velocity. Surface drainage easements, also looking at things that surface water that goes across various yards, and then looking at potentially some type of a retention system even within town, which we'll talk about a little bit in what happened thereafter, which is this kind of like gravel wetland feature that we were thinking to install. So that was just where we started. Next slide, please. And from that particular issue, looking at what was happening in town, we then moved into putting together this request for proposals, or RFP, which as of 2024, so last year, we finally put a package together, put out a request for proposals of what we called a design build. Without getting too much into the details, instead of just doing one version, it would be just getting a company to do a design project for us and basically designing something, and then we'd have to move on from that to put another RFP out to then get a contractor to build it. So given some of the concerns we had about external funding and deadlines for a variety of reasons, we thought we would try to consolidate both into what we call a design build and put a combination RFP out, which we did. Looking again at existing stormwater issues in our town and in public right-of-way areas, and focusing really on the town side first, but again, what we do here upstream would have benefit to what is happening downstream in the West Woods. So we had a couple of companies that did come and do a site visit as it was requested for the RFP. We looked at their bids, and the town council obviously reviewed those, and we awarded a contract by December of 2024 to a company called SMI. And again, this project, as John had mentioned earlier, is funded by both federal and state funds with ARPA money, which we actually had to commit by December of 2024. Otherwise, we would be vulnerable to losing it, and also we have a state bond. So we were able to, thankfully, get everything done within that deadline window. Now we're starting to work with that company to go through and refine some of their original proposal and look at building what they call a 35% design build. So we're just going through those meetings, those weekly meetings with them now. The contracted work will be both a design and construction to best manage the stormwater flows through town. And if you, I don't go into too much detail, but I'll point out, you see these areas that are numbered like 1 through 9, and the ones with circles are more like culverts. And if you walk through town, you know that those culverts exist. They're those little pipes that run, underneath the roadways, and they're just really conveying water from one place to another, but they're not slowing it down, they're not absorbing it, they're it's just really traversing. Areas that have lines on them, like the pink or the purple lines, are areas where either are asphalt swales existing now that we may want to then transition or transform into more of an earthen swale or potentially a bioswale, depending on what's needed in that location. And so that's basically what we're looking at. Area 6 is where there's a potential gravel wetland at the end of Center Street, which again, if water is not already slowed down through these swales that are on the design build plan right now, again, water comes through town. You need it to sort of be a sponge. You need to basically sponge up a lot of the water, slow it down, let it then eventually sort of continue to trickle. And then even so, water that may not be captured well enough there might wind up in this little retention pond, or called a gravel wetland. And so these are things that are still in planning, but not necessarily finalized. Next slide, please. So the progress right now is having these sort of weekly meetings with SMI, and this is with our stormwater working group, to discuss these final plans, to kind of think through some of the details and maybe make some slight adjustments to the design, and looking at what they consider a 35% build plan, something that you need to have in place so you can literally start the construction and continue to finalize the design build from there. So that's kind of where we are at the moment with the SMI. And now the next slide after that. And then sort of in a parallel universe, as John mentioned earlier, working with the Green Bank, while we're trying to deal with the stormwater management issues up here in town, obviously to improve for all those reasons about the public right-of-ways and also people's private property and sheeting of water, we also are trying to look towards the future is what is also still happening in the West Woods. Regardless of the water that comes through town and heads into the woods is not 100% of the water going into the West Woods. The West Woods is getting water that's coming directly off Washington Grove Lane, it's coming in from Town Crest, it's coming in from other directions. So this is only one piece of that larger puzzle that the West Woods is really suffering, and it's really being degraded. As much as we're trying to do something here, we're also needing to look at other points of entrance. So back in 2022, still, we worked with Soltez at that time for them to look at the West Woods. This is now almost 4 years ago. But to look at the West Woods from that point of view is to see how much erosion, soil erosion, tree damage, et cetera, was happening. So between those two reports that they did for us in 2022 and 2023, we had a better understanding of not only of our wicked problems, but of some of the plans that we need to work towards in trying to improve that. So they did a stormwater damage assessment of the West Woods. You can see some of the photographs here. The most infamous one in that upper right-hand corner is showing the edge of the lake fence, and that used to be a stream. It's now a trench over many years of water that's coming directly off of Washington Grove Lane for the most part. Some of it still also coming through town, and it has etched out so much of that little stream bed into a trench that we literally had to move the lake fence back, 6 feet, 4 feet, and that was only maybe 6 or so years ago, and even now there's even more erosion along those banks. We've literally had to top off trees because you can see where all the tree roots are. It's really just a total disaster. So we really need to get something done to try to figure out how to spare that and restore it. So there's shorter and longer term solutions that were identified through the Soltez report. Now in 2024, just to kind of conclude, as John mentioned, we're now working with the Green Bank and their environmental engineering company, which is called Maryland Environmental Services, right, MES. And so in a parallel situation, we're starting early discussions with them to look specifically at the West Woods and what they would suggest and recommend that could be done in trying to do some environmental restoration in the West Woods. Now, they've given us initially a draft mitigation plan, which is under review by the mayor and the council. Some comments were already sent back to MES to sort of, I wouldn't say debate, but to sort of consider, what is working better for the town's point of view versus what some of their initial suggestions were. So that's underway, okay? That's still, again, as John mentioned, we're going to need a lot of external funding to actually realize that project. The other thing that the town is also starting to participate in, there's a bigger picture going on, which is the Gaithersburg Watershed Planning meetings. And so we're starting to join them because whatever happens here in town is also happening with Gaithersburg. And again, what you don't want to do with your community neighbor is basically make it their problem, or vice versa. So we are actually impacted by Gaithersburg and their issues with water, stormwater issues, and so we're trying to use this as more of a regional solution. Next slide. And I just want to leave you with two happy thoughts. So one is, you remember, a couple years ago, fortunately, we were able to restore Whetstone Spring, and that is one of our natural springs that is past, if you go to the far end of the West Woods, just before you hit Kelly Park. It was a totally overgrown and degraded and neglected little area for many, many years. I used to ask a variety of people, like, where is it? I can't find it, until we found it. And then we took out a lot of the overgrowth vegetation. You can see in 2022 was what it looked like then. It was just invisible until we removed a lot of the old vegetation. We realized there's a little stream, that still comes from there. And thanks to Jim Quinn and RJ, actually thanks to John and the council at the time for approving us to do this, we had that whole thing restored. It's a miracle, and it's like a spiritual blessing right now to go there. And I have yet to see any vandalism. I mean, we went over there a couple of weekends ago, and that's one of my fears, is it's right by that ball field and that school and Kelly Park, and I believe that whoever decides to go there finds it as sort of like a spiritual moment, because nobody's done any spray painting or garbage or anything like that. And so that's what it still looks like. We were just there recently. We need a little more sort of spring cleanup over there, but it's beautiful. And we have a plaque over there that says that this is Whetstone Spring, and it was restored in 2023, which was just in time for our 150th anniversary. Last slide. Last slide is to also talk about another spring, okay? And so this is called Maple Spring. And for those of you who love and enjoy going to Maple Lake, this is the spring that was the original sort of water feed into what eventually became Maple Lake, which has a whole nother history behind it. But the spring is still there. The old slide, this is something that Joan had shared with me years ago. And those of you who grew up in town probably know a little bit more about it. It's true history, but it's somewhere around 1900. Forgive me if that's a little bit off, but that's what the spring looked like originally. And people would take their cattle, their livestock there, and they would go and have, fresh water. You can see the nice little lady. Somebody told me, was that the Walker kids? Where's Marilyn? I don't know if that's yeah? Okay, Major Walker's daughters or something. But these lovely ladies, thank you, in their little spring outfits, their white linen outfits, and they're sitting on this cement ledge, and you can see it's like 1, 2, 3, right, steps down, and there's the spring right there. And it was very open, and you can imagine what this area looked like, right, at that time. That's open field, right? That's still farmland. If you look at the slide on the right, that's what it looks like right now. So last fall, Jim came in and he got rid of a lot of overgrown vegetation in and around the spring so you could actually see the spring again. And so that's what it looks like right now. There's beautiful skunk cabbage and there's beautiful ferns that are now starting to fill in along the stream banks. If you go to the back of that photograph, you can see a little kind of stream that's heading out of the cemented area. That's Maple Lake back there. And that little stream still continues to feed into the back end of Maple Lake. So what we want to do, and Jim is willing to do this, is he wants to do the cement work to repair as best as possible that ledge, that cement ledge, restore that area around the spring itself. We've already cleared out a lot of vegetation. We want to put in a lot of those boulders like you saw at Whetstone to reinforce the stream banks. And it's still going to feed into Maple Lake. So that's what we are looking to try to get done this year, is to really just restore the area. However, unlike Whetstone Spring, what we see back in Maple Spring is the back of that section now, let's say to the left of that photograph, 2025, is where Newport Estates is and where community services are. And every time we go out there, right, Mary and others who were at our recent cleanup, is we have a lot of trash that gets deposited over there. So we're a little more worried about vandalism, potentially, after we restore the spring. So under consideration, it requires a lot more further conversation, is whether we need need to enclose a separate fence enclosure around that. We'll figure that out later, but it'll be part of the larger plan. So I just wanted to have a little moment to advertise that, forgive me. And then the last slide, just to thank everybody who's on our Stormwater Management Working Group. Thank you all for all your efforts. I apologize because in recent months I have been buried in my federal work situation, and I haven't been able to attend a lot of the meetings, but I know that they're still ongoing, and I'm trying to keep up by reading the notes. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Patty. I know all of you recognize that the efforts has been made on both the east and the west woods by the Woods Committee, which has been chaired by Patty and Joan for so many years, and before that by Jolie or whoever, I forgot was.
No, it was Ann.
Ann Briggs, yeah. Have really contribute to maintaining one of the major assets of the town, which are these two woods reserve forest areas. And the unfortunate part is that time and weather changes and just cycles of growth and predation, quote, predation by deer have all compromised to one extent or another. And that means we can ignore it and let it play out, or we can do something about it, try and do something about it. And the Woods Committee has been trying to do something about it for many years, and we expend a reasonable amount of resources. You've seen this potential project here in the West Woods will require even more resources, but we certainly have the interest and the energy to try and pursue it. Thanks.
A descendant of those three women sitting around this
Yeah.
table is our treasurer.
Well, we'll have to take a picture of you sitting there. Okay, next item, nearing toward the end, is discussion of the town council reports. The reports were all made available. They're in the electronically in the folder that I gave out links to. They were available during voting. So this is the time, if you have any questions concerning those reports, to ask them. Anyone? Yes, Mary.
So I was wondering, for the DEIB training, will there be announcements going out to town about opportunities for other town residents to participate?
Yeah.
Do you have a time frame in mind or not yet?
We will absolutely, once the council approves the programs that we'll be offering. In fact, they may not actually be approved until we get a significant amount of interest. So we'll be absolutely publicizing their availability. Yes.
Also, that nice DEIB presentation that you showed on the boards, is that accessible to somebody who, can?
Yes, there's a link. That link is also in the materials, the folder that you can get to, which has the budget information. It also has DEIB folder that contains a Word file which has the link in it to the YouTube presentation, so you can go listen to it and look at it. It also contains the summaries of the 4 sessions that they conducted, the 3-hour session to residents and the 3 1-hour sessions which were described.
You talked about something on the town website? I'm sorry, wrong.
Well, probably on the town website as well. Christine will put it up there. But, when I distribute the agenda in my Grove Alert, also here, the Grove Alert, and it's a Dropbox folder, and it contains this information. Yeah, go to the alert. All those links work. They should work just fine. and you'll be able to get there and see all of this. These presentations, the slides from these presentations will also be in that folder. All right, any other questions? Judy?
Comment, question, maybe this is under communications, but there's like not very many people at this meeting, and I'm just wondering, there are a lot of people I talked to who didn't know about it, and I know, you know, there's lots of discussion about we don't have a print newsletter anymore, and I know the reasons to not have it, but is it a concern that maybe people didn't even know that there was any?
I literally don't know what to say, Judy. It's a mystery to me how so many people frequently say they didn't know something was going on. I can only conclude is they totally ignore communications from town. They aren't regular readers of the town bulletin, which basically presents repeatedly all of the information. The town meeting information has been available for several months and has been in the bulletin. I sent several Grove alerts on the subject, which every household for sure has one recipient, and any resident, most households have multiple recipients. So, you know, I just don't know what more we can do. It's constantly a mystery as to why people don't know about it. I can only conclude is they're not really interested in what's going on until they are. Anybody have any other questions? We've got plenty of.
Did you make any lager here, or was it all idea?
No, there's some ale. I don't make lager. I make ale. It's not an IPA, but it's also not a lager. So. You know, to make lager, you have to have some temperature control. It's fermented at a cooler temperature. So that was an important question. Be sure that's in the minutes. Kathy, be sure. Okay. Questions on the councils? All right. If not, I thought the council did a very, very good job summarizing their areas of responsibility this year. All right. Then we, yes?
I don't know if this is the time to bring this up. Louder, please.
Betsy Klinger.
Because of the people that are sitting in
Maybe not an appropriate time to bring this up, but I've had different impressions of what's happening with the idea of having kiosks in town instead of those stupid things that we do to publicize things. And I thought it was going to happen, and I'm hearing that it's not about to happen, and can somebody fill me in on it?
Well, it's never going to happen until a proposal is brought to the town council.
Until what?
A proposal is brought to the town council.
They were working on it now. It'll come up.
When?
And hopefully at the next council. Every gets out the dog food.
There's a priority. There's a series of priorities.
It's going to happen, yeah. Oh, yeah. It'll be there. Yeah.
So the priorities appear to be the dog waste is neck and neck with locking the tennis courts. And then we have the kiosks making a run for it. So, yeah, you hear correctly. It's just that, you know, as in everything that the town does, nobody's going to charge out and do something without some thought being put into it. And I believe that's what's going on now. Some thoughtful research into what sort of kiosk will work, where they should go, whatever. Any more? All right. Well, we have a few more things. We have new business. Hopefully there's no new business. I will say to everybody listening, virtually and here, you are always welcome to suggest to your counselors, to Kathy, to me, anybody, business for the town meeting, so that we really want to address things and not have to kind of wing it on the fly. So glad to hear no new business. We're on to election results. So there's, yeah, everybody's been holding their breath. We have Mary Blake is here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks to everybody who came out to vote. It really matters when you let your voices be heard. And we know this was a riveting election this year. And without further ado, so for the town mayor, we have 69 votes for John Compton. We have 2 votes for Allie Galanders, and we have 1 vote for Jonathan Dale. So congratulations, John. And we had 2 seats for councilor open. For John Porter got 75 votes. And then Mary Warfield received 73 votes. So congratulations, and no write-ins. So, thank you, everybody.
Okay. There, John, see how easy you go from being a laid-back retiree to a put-upon town councilor.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The process in this town is just...
Everybody just supports your work ethic now. Anyway, okay, great. In that, if there's no further, Kathy, yes, I thought.
I'd just like to take a moment.
Want to escape.
All these thank yous going around, and I love that. But can we thank this man right here?
Thank you. I've often tried to, when other people learn I'm the mayor of even a small town, you know, they want to know, well, you know, how can, you know, isn't that a lot of work? And, you know, how do you do it? And you know, and I usually end up describing that after these many years, it seems, well, you know, I may not be the smartest person in the room or the most organized, but I seem to be good at organizing people to do the work. So I'll take credit for delegating and encouraging everyone in what they do for the town, because this is such a great community. You know, it's remarkable year after year that we manage our grounds, our facilities, our external business with our neighbors, and all these issues with virtually entirely with volunteers who are members of the community and who are invested, and that's what it's all about. And I'm privileged to be mayor of all of you people who continue to do all the work. Thank you. Yeah. All right. In that case, hearing no objection, we will adjourn the 2025 town meeting.